Yik Imperial Stealth Cruiser, Inshal. Federation Space Border. How much further? Visht, on any other day, would have shot any being that dared to question his officers on his own bridge. His passenger, however, was not ordinary, and neither were the orders. We are already stretching the engines beyond safety limits, my lord. Any faster and we would arrive in pieces, not to mention the cloak would fail, the captain replied. The elder Yurfon noted the curt tone. Brecht, son of Brocht, would have cut down lesser beings in his heyday, but the war with the humans had been costly. The Yuvon Armada needed capable captains, now more than ever. Perhaps, one day, he would seek satisfaction. But today's demands meant his blade to seek satisfaction on a far-off tomorrow, for the journey was one that needed no interruptions, lest a greater dishonor fall upon him. Federation Navy Headquarters, Mars. How does the defendant plead? Intoned the judge. Not guilty to all charges, ma'am. Kowalski reacted quickly to the challenge. The murmurs reverberated through the room like ripples in a pond. There will be order in my courtroom, barked Judge Adams, before leaning forward slightly across her desk. The court will advise the defense that these are extremely serious charges. I understand that a plea deal has been offered and rejected. I trust your client has been appropriately advised, Counselor. Colonel Jacob Kalowski looked to his friend. No, the poor soul on trial today was not his friend, it was his charge, to defend to the best of his ability. And no man had earned this more than Major Dr. Marcus Larrey. The usually cheerful doctor looked unusually gaunt. Charges of treason would do that to a man. The legal circus of deciding to fight the same charges had made the troubles even more harrowing. Marcus had broken the law. Kowalski knew it. The court knew it. Hell, the entire Federation Navy knew it. But he had done something good. He did not deserve the infamy of being a traitor. Something decent had been wrought by the good doctor's hands that made Kowalski fight hard for his friend. Marcus looked to his determined lawyer, and then to the judge. I know the charges, ma'am, and I stand by my lawyer's counsel. I am not a traitor. Very well. On your head it is, Major, the judge responded. Is prosecution ready? A cough escaped the preening Lieutenant Samuels. With his hawk-like nose and polished smile, he was a predator in a uniform, savouring the prey before him. The fact that his small mercy deal had been rejected only made him more determined to see the traitor hang. Prosecution is ready, ma'am. Samuels could literally taste the victory. FNS Destroyer, Gibraltar. Mars Defense Fleet, Federation Space. Ensign Nakamura was happy. His ship was far removed from the front lines, guarding the Sol homeworlds. The rationing was over, and the commissary had served genuine omelettes and coffee after a year. 6 more hours, and he would be joining his lover at an Italian resort. The galaxy was at peace again, and so was he. So when the sensor alarm rang, he prayed it was a sensor shadow. The war had barely ended a few months ago. Both sides were still licking their wounds, knowing the ceasefire had been tenuous, but still holding strong. Skipper? Contact bearing 033992. Readings look like a Yuvon cruiser, the ensign cried out. It just decloaked off our port bow. The klaxon rang around him as the ship sounded the call to arms, with their most dreaded enemy decloaking right beside them. Are you kidding me? Captain Stevens ran to the bridge with the XO in tow. How did the lizards evade the sensor nets all the way to Mars? Battle stations! Charge primary weapons! Get us out their weapons range! The crew worked seamlessly. Torpedo tubes were loaded and lasers primed. They may have been caught off guard, but Stevens swore he would take them down with him. Sir, we are receiving a transmission on repeat. The ensign spoke with incredulity. Skipper, you really need to listen to this. Captain Stevens, mere seconds from giving the order to fire upon humanity's hated enemies, listened to the message and almost fainted. Hold fire, and get me the Admiralty. Ensign Nakamura wondered if his lover would join him at a monastery instead. Federation Navy Headquarters, Mars. Marcus had never hated lawyers in his entire life, more than at this very moment. Excluding his own friendly counselor, of course. Samuels had come after him with the tenacity of the Spanish Inquisition, hell-bent to get him burned at the stake, if he could. Standing accused, Marcus knew he had to tell his side of the story. It was a tricky maneuver. He could say his piece. His words, given proper context, would make sense, but they could also be twisted against him. And the conniving prosecutor was an expert at turning his own words against him. Walk us through the mission again. One more time. Samuels paced the room. You were deployed with the 5th Nova Medical Corps in Operation Stingray in the Kifari system. Is that correct? Yes, said Marcus. The court reminds the defendant to appropriately address the prosecutor as counselor, sir, or lieutenant, interrupted the judge, dressing Marcus down with stern eyes. As the prosecutor has extended you the very same courtesy, Doctor. Marcus mentally kicked himself. That had probably the jury against him a bit too. The last thing he wanted to look was undisciplined. Yes, Counselor, repeated Marcus. Thank you, Doctor. Now, will you repeat the events of 2901-2287 for us? The Doctor sighed. He didn't need to recall the day. It played fresh in his mind every waking second. My platoon was part of a small strike force targeting the Yuvon supply lines, running through the Cathari system, Marcus said. The operation was common knowledge by now. And your specific orders, Major, said the prosecutor. I was to render medical aid and assist with special ops in the area, Marcus gulped. He knew what was coming. Samuels turned around with a twisted smile and flashed a file across the holodesk for all to see. Come now, Major, don't be modest. Let's see just how special some of these operations were. You were supposed to help with interrogations, weren't you? Yes, Lieutenant. Unfortunately. Marcus spoke with a gritted voice. Yes. Not so eager to get your hands dirty, were you, Doctor? Samuels flashed his prior disciplinary reports on the holodesk. In fact, you were disciplined and demoted before the mission for your refusal to work on the biological weapons project, were you not? Yes, Lieutenant, but I... Marcus was cut off before he could finish. And on the date in question, you used vital supplies to treat a Yuvon combatant, did you not? Samuel steadily increased his voice across the room. Marcus glared but nodded. I'll take that as a yes, Major. Critical Federation supplies. Samuels dropped every single word for added effect. You used already rationed medical supplies on an enemy combatant and refused to turn him over for advanced interrogation, is that correct? Yes, but it was a That's all the court needs to know, Major. Samuels cut him off again. But you... That's enough, Major. Judge Adams' voice boomed. You will restrict your answers to those asked of you. Is that clear? No. Murmurs rang through the courtroom again. To defy a judge was to invite even more charges. Marcus had had enough. Kowalski saw the dam break within his friend and client and reached for his mic to request a recess. Marcus held up his hand to stop him. No, this is not clear. He raised his own voice as the judge banged her gavel. You will hear my piece. It was a child. Lizard or not, it was still a youngling. Has our humanity fallen so low to torture a child? Samuels interjected with his own loud voice. A soldier of military age, behind a laser cannon. And he was dying, you sanctimonious prick! Marcus yelled at the prosecutor, who was taken aback but relished that his prey was digging its own grave. A kid! Like the ones we sent to man our own cannons and ships. Marcus struggled to continue, but a tingling sensation rose through his hands. 10,000 volts ran through his body, as a bailiff restrained him, and his vision blurred. Judge Advocate General Chambers, Federation Navy Headquarters, Mars. Judge Adams' chambers was a mix of melancholy and joy. It was sparse, but for two modifications, luxuries obtained at great personal expense. The first was a small rack of physical books, unheard of in the age of datapads, simulating the legal libraries of antiquity. People found the great old tomes a bit unusual, but none questioned a three-star admiral's eccentricities during a war. The second modification was a small tea cart brimming with a rare china set and caffeine in all forms known to man. Some even suspected a small flask of whiskey hidden within the tea bags. Passing judgment was tiring, and a thirsty business, apparently. Colonel Kowalski had seen the situation spiral before his eyes as his friend went on his little tirade, admitting his guilt and practically crucifying himself. He had nearly torn his own hair out, but at this point the options were bleak. Samuel was calmly sipped a cup of jasmine tea, enjoying another notch among his victories. At this point, the only thing we need to deliberate is if he gets shot by a rifle or a particle cannon, the prosecutor stated evenly. Kowalski wondered if the judge would part with some of her scotch before he had to break the news to Marcus. When the phone rang, Judge Adams was surprised to hear the president on the other line. The admiral's spine became briefly more erect in salute. "Yes, but..." She started to speak, but a lump formed in her throat. "Are you sure?" The woman who finished the call was a far more furious and far more puzzled being than the one who had received it. 5 minutes later, Samuels was escorted from the office by an MP for having thrown jasmine tea across the judge's prized legal tomes, while Kowalski wondered if it was too late to join a religion. Marcus was being escorted to another place. They had blindfolded him before being shuffled into a grav car. He knew what awaited him. It would likely be his sentencing, where they would probably expect him to grovel. He wouldn't. He had done his duty, as demanded by the oaths he had taken all those years ago. He was a soldier, a doctor, a human being. No situation would be dire enough to make him a murderer. When the MPs escorting him unlocked his restraints, he noticed the differences. He passed by halls far more ornate than any military installation. Some doors were made of real wood, a rare luxury on Mars. And the people among the halls had more brass on their shoulders than even he had ever seen, short of a history holovid. The room he passed would have put some palaces to shame, and he knew they had important people. The kind of people who decided the fates of millions like him with a stroke of a pen. He was ushered into a room guarded by 4 suits. MPs nodded to them, and his restraints were removed. And as he entered, his legs almost gave away. Kowalski stood to one side, along with the president of the Federation, and a single Yuvon. Old by looks, but he carried himself with a regal pride. The marks on his breastplate, much like the human rank insignias, belied his stature. Most Yuvon were of a taller build than humans, but age had stooped this one. Marcus knew he was somebody important among the Yuvon. Kowalski grabbed him by the arm, as he listed in a daze. He didn't know whether to salute or faint, barely held up by his friend. "I fear the good doctor may yet pass out again. Perhaps some water, Major." President Santiago smiled at the poor man's discomfort. Apparently he was used to the common people fainting before him. One of the guards pressed a glass of water to his hands, and Marcus gulped it, slowly. "This is him?" the Yuvan asked. "It is," the President replied. "Major Larrey, I'd like you to meet Lord Admiral Brecht, son of Brocht of the Yuvon Imperium. He arrived yesterday on an official business trip, but he will not speak of anything else until he has met you." Brecht approached Marcus, and brought his eyes to the human's level. "Why did you do it, human? What was that young soldier to you?" he asked. Marcus had asked himself that very question every day, but words were slow to come to him. The boy in Cathari? He was just some kid, bleeding out. I could fix him and I did it. Because I could. "You treated the boy," Brecht responded. "Because you could? No other reason." Marcus, puzzled but resolute, nodded. He was a living creature. As much as the war made murderers of us all, I had a chance to do some good. So I did. What's going on here? Brecht produced a small jeweled orb from his robe, and placed it on a table amid the room. "We Yuvon pride ourselves on our honor and legacy. This war has not spared us either from becoming Vershing." The translator struggled with the last word, and Brecht knew it had not come across, repeating the words. "From becoming what you fear becoming as well. The being you spared was my only son. Though much blood has been spilled on both sides, I would not see you die for it. Honor demanded this of me. This orb is a neutron weapon. It is designed to destroy all organic life forms on a small planetoid. Had this being been dead, I would have triggered it. Given his alive state, I surrender it as a pledge of my house, to see to it that the peace continues, provided this man remains whole." Marcus had never seen a head of state dumbfounded, but President Santiago quickly collected himself. "I think, Lord Admiral, that will be the collective aim of humanity from now on. Dr. Marcus Larrey remains as healthy and hearty as humanly possible. Now, shall we adjourn to the main room?" Marcus would barely remember what happened afterwards, from being honorably discharged and being given a credit account, with quite a few zeros on it. What he did remember was that within a day, every man, woman and child in the Federation toasted a drink to the name of the good Dr. Larrey.